You're listening to Practice Growth HQ,
the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies to help grow your healthcare practice faster.
PracticeGrowthHQ.com. Your thriving healthcare practice starts here.
Now here's your host, Angus Pryor.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Practice Growth HQ, the weekly podcast for growth-minded healthcare professionals. Whether you're a dentist, physiotherapist, doctor, or other healthcare professional, we talk all about what's required personally and professionally to get your practice growing faster. Now, my guest today is Candace Mae. Candace Mae is a leadership and strategic business consultant. We're definitely going to be talking about that. Executive coach, trainer, and speaker. She coaches and trains executives, business owners, and women in leadership struggling with toxicity and expansion. She's a multi-time author, founder and CEO of Candace Mae Training and Services, all the way from San Diego in California. Welcome, Candace Mae.
Thank you, Angus. I'm so glad to be here with you. Looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Now, Candace Mae, we like to start the podcast with what we call the Fast Five, kind of quick questions, quicker answers, just so our audience can get to know you more quickly. Question one, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Warren, Michigan. Michigan's the mitten in the States. And I right here, just below the thumb, 20 miles northeast of Detroit.
Oh, there we are. Not exactly the same climate as the beautiful San Diego.
Absolutely not.
Question two, favorite book besides your own?
Well, that's a good question. I love books. I'm always reading books. Right now, I'm reading People Fuel by Dr. John Townsend. And I have to say, it's my favorite book at this time. People Fuel, Dr. John Townsend. It talks all about people needing people and all the interactions and dynamics of the nutrients, 22 relational nutrients that we need to develop in relationships to be healthy.
I like
to have fun.
I like that concept, relational nutrients. Yes, I'm an extremely avid reader as well. So I asked that question partly for the listeners and partly for me. All right, question three. Candace Mae, what's one of your superpowers?
My superpowers. Well, I would say I have a strong empathy for people, and I have a clear sense of knowing that sometimes comes upon me to see the core issues.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Question four, something you wish your 20-year-old self knew.
Wow. My 20-year-old self, that's just before I had my daughter, my oldest daughter. That was a long time ago. I would want my 20-year-old self to know life's going to be hard, but as long as I'm persistent and consistent in my faith, I will come out ahead.
Nice. I really like that insight. And then final question five, something you're grateful for.
I'm grateful for life. I'm grateful for every day. I should have been dead. I had a massive stroke December 9th, 2020, and that should have been an end game taking me out, and God completely restored my health. 100%. You never know I had a stroke. So I'm grateful for every day. There is a stronger drive and sense of urgency ever since.
Wow, that's a terrific reason to be grateful. Take us back to, kind of the journey, I suppose, that you went through from finishing school to where you are now.
Sure. I graduated high school in 1981 in Michigan. In my senior year, I took a professional certified legal secretarial course, like a trade school, at the same time I was in my senior year. So about 19, a year later, I packed up my car and drove across the United States to California. Didn't know anybody here in California, but I wanted to break free and become the best person that I could be. I wanted to be my best self, and felt, due to the circumstances that I grew up in, I would have to move away from my family. I felt very constricted. I felt a lot of dysfunction. I felt a lot of them telling me what I was doing and why, and holding me back. So I needed to break free. And that was my journey. I packed up my car and drove across the United States. And my mother asked me to land with a cousin who was her age that I'd never met, up by Saugus, by Magic Mountain, Six Flags Magic Mountain roller coaster amusement park. And so I did, and was there briefly. And then life took off. I got a job as an architectural secretary, and then learned some purchasing with a international dairy fresh company. Went back to college, got my bachelor's and my master's degree, and that's a whole story in and of itself, because I was a single mom at that point and didn't know how I would go back to college. But God said, you need to go back to college. And I was like, okay, I'd love to. How am I going to do that? And then I heard a radio commercial for a Christian college, and I was told, go apply. And I said, okay, I'll apply. And not knowing where I get the funds. And I had to take the CBEST and to enter, and the test for entrance. And I only took it half seriously. I flipped through it. It's timed, and I had test anxiety.
Yeah.
So I had heard like a week before, if you're stuck on those tests, they're arbitrary, just, kind of whatever, 50-50. So I did everything I could really fast that I could answer quickly. But when it was almost time out, I just went through and randomly filled in random spots without reading any of the questions.
Yeah. Yes, we've all done that, I think, at high school.
Well, this was for college entrance. And I got called in by the college, and they said, well, we've never seen any test results like yours before. I said, really? And they said, yeah, like, did you just flip it and answer some of the questions? And I said, yeah. Why? And they go, because the ones you had like high scores on everything. And then all of a sudden near the end, they were all wrong, or like it was kind of weird. And I go, oh, well, I didn't take it seriously. I mean, I got honors in high school without even trying. In fact, I thought if I'd have tried in high school, I could have been the valedictorian, because I graduated cum laude and I didn't even try. So like, I just kind of blew it off. And so they said, okay, no problem. We'll let you enter on probation. And I said, okay. And I was on the deans and honors list every semester. And God provided all the finances. It was amazing. Years later, I would have a tea at my house with women from my church, and they were all talking about their school debt and their college debt and their husband's college debt. And now their kids were getting ready to go to college. And that's when it hit me. God has blessed me so much. I don't have any college debt. Wow. And I hadn't even realized how blessed I was.
What did you study, your bachelor and your master's?
My bachelor's was business administration with an emphasis in entrepreneurship. I had a minor in accounting, finance, and then my master's was in interactive telecommunications, IT, project management, all of that.
So how did you end up in the leadership and strategic business consulting space, and I guess executive coaching as well?
Well, I've always wanted to have my own business, and I'm a personal growth junkie. So I started my personal growth journey like around age 13, really digging into personal growth. That's why at 18 and 19, I'm like, I have to move to another state so that I can grow to my fullest potential without any hindrances here. And so I took all kinds of personal growth courses, leadership conferences, in depth. I attended a lot of counseling through the years. After I got my bachelor's degree, the entrepreneurship was a big deal for me. So I continued working with smaller companies at one point where I could wear a lot of different hats and had a lot of different responsibilities, and realized that that this is a gift. A business side is a gift. It comes rather easier for me. And then all the way through my master's degree, I just continued knowing that I wanted to have my own company someday. And I invested in my own personal growth all the way through the years, extensively, developing my leadership, developing my communication, putting myself into certification for a coach. Had 3 different speaker coaches who were speaking life into me. They were very good, top-notch speakers, coaches. So I put myself through quite a bit of training, several years of mentorship.
So, Candace Mae, this podcast is specifically for healthcare professionals, and it's fair to say that in the leadership space, that is something that many of them do struggle with. I mean, the reality is that many of them have got into their space because of an interest in science or perhaps helping people. You know, they've had the skills in that area, and yet for a healthcare practice to grow, leadership is required. Like, that's the reality. Can you just give us some insights and, I guess, the importance of leadership in small business and things that the listeners can do?
Sure. Leadership is essential, and leadership all begins with personal growth. When we have a team, a company that we've started and we're working in, or a team that reports to us and we're leading them, leadership skills and communication are very different than hands-on technical skills or dentistry or doctor work. It's a lot of work to become a doctor and a dentist. My hat is off to them. Those are great skills. But when it comes to leadership, that is a whole nother element, and it takes the people aspect. Having empathy for others, having the ability to be self-aware. I think emotional intelligence, I guess, would sum it up the best for me, because emotional intelligence involves self-awareness, what you're thinking, what things trigger you, why they trigger you, that you've dug into some of those issues that pop up to figure out why you feel anxious, why you feel you can't complete something or have those personal relationships, and you've worked through a lot of these self-awareness of what's happening inside, that self-talk going on inside you. And you've been able to confront your greatest fears and really break through them and develop some self-regulation and self-management, so that you can not knee-jerk react when someone upsets you, or a customer's, not responding the way you want them to. And especially like in dentistry, you may get clients who are flat out afraid to be there. And if a dentist can have compassion and train their staff to have compassion with the clients, that would go a long way. I know for me, I've had dental fears, and I just went to the dentist 2 weeks ago, and we'll be back in their office tomorrow. And I have a good dentist, so she is very compassionate and steps into that and takes the time to pause and help a client through those difficult moments. And having a good bedside manner for a doctor's office is especially essential as well. Most business for doctors and dentists is probably referral, right? Or network.
It's certainly very high, yes. For a listener who goes, look, Candace Mae, I kind of accept what you're saying. I realise if I were a bit more compassionate with my patients, then they'd be more likely to ultimately to sort of do what I'm recommending they do, ethical treatment recommendations, etc. What are some simple, I guess, practical things that they can do to increase with their empathy? I mean, you said at the start of the interview that's one of your superpowers, and maybe it's something you've had to work on, but I suspect there's a sort of inherent part there for you. But what about for people who really struggle with that?
Well, I think one thing is to start out thinking about what you're thinking about. When when someone is having, say, a client or a staff member is having a challenge, instead of developing some of these 22 relational nutrients that are talked about in the book, People Fuel is key, right? These are all the elements. There's 4 quadrants. The first one is just presence, being there with people when they're having difficulty, right? Attuning to their feelings, like letting them know you understand how they may be feeling, accepting them without judgment, validating that maybe they'd had a bad experience before and it was probably very tragic and could have even caused them PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Just validating them is huge. Identifying with them to let them know what their experience is normal, normalizing that identification with them. And then being able to contain someone's strong emotions. I mean, my dentist said, I have clients who sometimes cannot come sit into the dental chair. I have to go into the lobby to talk to them because they're so distraught.
Well, I've seen a study in Australia that suggests that 49% of Australians have got some form of dental fear. So this is, we're talking about dentists here, but it could be true with other healthcare professionals as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, there's always that piece of quadrant 2, speaking life into people, right? Conveying the good, affirming them, some quality that they've done, that they've put effort into, makes an affirmation. Not telling them they have a great smile, not telling them they're just smart in general, because those are things that they didn't necessarily have a part in. It's more of a gift. It needs to be something that they've put effort into to build them up.
Such as
you were very good in how you interacted with that client to calm them down. Okay. That is a great affirmation to give to a staff member. Respect, offering hope, forgiveness, and then, of course, celebrating people for an accomplishment is huge. It reinforces something they did good. People will remember that you took the time to celebrate them. And
is this, are you suggesting that this is more for you as a leader of a team or in relation to your patients?
I would say definitely with your team, but for a client, if you know your client has had a big accomplishment, like I have a book that's coming out, and my dentist when they found out I had a book coming out, she made a very big deal about my book and what an accomplishment that was for me, and wanted to know the name of it and how she could get a copy and all of this, which was a way of honoring me, I guess, and celebrating my success.
Okay, that's interesting. I suppose, dare I say, if we pick on the dental example again. I mean, if the odds are that there's a bunch of patients sitting in front of you that are quite uncomfortable being there, then presumably the affirmation could even extend to a sort of a simple comment at the end of the consult, or even midway to say, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Remaining calm during this time," or something like that. Is that the sort of thing?
Oh my goodness, you nailed it. This dentist that I have is so good. She would constantly say to me, "Candace Mae, you're doing so well. You're so brave. You're handling this extremely well." And just her constant affirmation and reassurance was calming for me. So it doesn't have to be a lot.
No. I think, I'm, sitting there kind of imagining myself in this situation, not so much from a fear point of view, but the truth is that all of us are capable of performing, as it were, at a higher level when we've got that person, the coach. I mean, if you look at professional athletes, overwhelmingly they've got a coach, because there's another person sitting there who is, among other things, calling them to a higher standard. So I can see a scenario where you're going, you're you're sort of doing your best, but maybe you feel like you're struggling a bit. But if you're getting that affirmation to say, hey, keep going, you're sort of heading in the right direction, that probably gives you the fuel to keep going.
Yeah. And coaching is awesome because when you take training and you put coaching on top of the training, you get an 80% higher change in behavior that's sustainable.
Okay.
When you think about coaching, how often do you have an hour any given week spent totally on you, focused 100% on Angus? What is it what's going on with you? What is it that you need? That can be your sounding board. That can be a reflection. That can ask key questions to make you think of things in a different way. That can dig deeper into the why as to if you think you can't accomplish something. Why is that? And helping you identify what you might be thinking that you couldn't really voice. Somebody who could maybe attune to how you're feeling. Sometimes you may not even know how you're feeling. And yet, so when somebody can come alongside you and help you put words to that, it's like a release that just kind of dissolves the anxiety. Having somebody to help you break out that huge goal that you want to accomplish into smaller bite sizes with milestone dates and holding you accountable. And that you're going to see your coach in an hour. I'm going to see Candace Mae tomorrow. I better get this done, right? Because I don't want to go in there and say I didn't do it when I can much more easily on my own just let it slide.
Yeah. Well, curiously enough, at the time of recording, I'm going to see my physiotherapist tomorrow, who was kind of a coach for me. I'm a pretty keen runner, so I see the same guy every month. And I know, among other things, he's going to ask me, have you been doing the exercises that we discussed when we met last? And then, as luck would have it, the following day is my own personal business coach. And so I've got my to-do list there. Candace Mae, for the listeners who are going, this is good. I get the sense that having someone to help me is, that's ultimately going to help me grow my practice. Tell us about how you work with people when you're an executive coach, because some people are listening and say, well, I like the sound of that. Like, how does that look? How does it work? Hey, Angus here. How would you like to speed up the growth of your healthcare practice? For the first time, we're inviting you to come live on the show as we dissect your business and identify the ways to get your practice growing faster. You'll get expert advice and simple to implement tools and tips while the listeners share the journey with you. If this sounds like you, then visit www.practicegrowthhq.com/live and enter your details. If you make it, we'll be in touch. Now let's get back on with the show.
Well, being an executive coach is nice because especially now we can do it virtually through Zoom or over a telephone call where we actually meet and on a regular basis, once a week or once every other week. I prefer weekly because I think the momentum stays in place, but with busy schedules, sometimes it's better to do every other week, depending on the person's needs and what they have going on. There's always some questions. I give them a form to fill out to ask them what their biggest struggles are right now, what they're striving to work on, and set some goals and framework of what they want to work on. I have one client who's really great. She loves to come and have me be her sounding board and working through various goals she has career-wise that take her to the next level. And she's amazing to work with. I have another client whose son will be taking over the business. And so we spend more time in his coaching, working on leadership development skills. So it's almost more training and how he might handle a situation than the other. So they're extreme and coaching is very tailored to the individual, to the individual's needs. So it's not like everybody follows the same program.
What would you say are the main reasons that your executive coaching clients come to you? What is the need they think you're going to help them fulfill?
Well, it's always growth. To growth for them as a leader and how they interact with other people. Communication is often a part of what we're working with, because if you're not able to connect with the people around you, you're not going to be able, you're going to have meetings that are stuck, you're going to have personality conflicts, you're going to have misunderstandings constantly. So working through that personal growth and the leadership team as a whole, coming together. Sometimes I serve as a facilitator between people who are having difficulties communicating and talking, and helping them overcome their hurdles and find ways and personality styles that they may possess, and how they can treat each other differently and bend their personality to meet the other person where they're at. So there's all different kind of strategies that may come into play. And always the goal is to develop a high performance team to get over those roadblocks. If you've got a company who has a lot of turnover, there's probably a reason for that turnover. So coming in to find out what's happening is one of the things I would do as a consultant. I would come in and interview various people and make observations, and then pull the team together and facilitate and get to the bottom of things and smooth that out. So removing roadblocks, enhancing communication, developing strategies and how to have those innovative meetings and get those projects on task and meet deadlines. All of these things come into play, again, depending on the individual client whose needs it is. Sometimes I have a client who maybe has a vision for the company that the company isn't doing yet. And so they're working with me to find out ways to present the information and break through and build a new department or structure in a company to build out their dream job.
Interesting. Now, Candace Mae, as we start to wrap things up, many of the listeners at this point are going, we heard your extraordinary story in relation to your stroke, but I guess the big question is, what happened after? You had this pretty extraordinary event, and then a seemingly healing that happened much faster than it should have. What impact has that had for you since then?
That impact has been that I've driven to a higher calling. My goal is now more to help people realize every day matters. We don't know how long we're here. We're not guaranteed 2 more hours in our day, right? We're not told when that stroke's coming or that heart attack or embolism in your heart's going to erupt, right? Where we're not told. It's just, it happens. Boom, you're here one minute and the next you're not. So being aware of that, helping people to realize their purpose and to do that internal work of their own personal growth so they can connect with other people in a stronger, more sincere way, will build your business as well as develop you and the people around you. Helping leaders develop other leaders around them is my passion, because they take this growth within them and they take it home with them. And now families are impacted, and the dynamics in the communication is enhanced in the families, and they do volunteer work in the communities, and they're now stepping out into a community, and there's ripple effects that are changing. And as people identify their values and what are they living up to their values, and are the decisions they're making in their workplace aligned with their values, everything changes. Everything changes.
That's great. I was talking to a guy on the weekend a guy I don't know that well, but I, was chatting to him and I said, "Oh, how's your week?" And he said, "Oh, okay, work's pretty boring." And this was a guy, I assume he'd be around 50. And I said to him, what's up with that? What do you mean your work's boring? And he said, "Oh, no, it's been like that for several years." And I eventually said to him, because the truth is, at the time of recording, I've been to 2 family funerals in the last 8 weeks. And, thank God I haven't had a stroke or a near-death experience or anything like that. But that sort of the sense of how kind of temporary everything is and how it can all change, I more or less said to this guy, "You should go to a bunch of funerals because life is too short to be sitting there doing something you find boring." I mean, that's insane, particularly for a person of that maturity. I just go, well, we've only get one go at this. So, life is way too short to be doing that. Well, Candace Mae, it's been a really interesting discussion today. If people want to find out more about you or reach out, what's the best way to do it?
I think my website would be the best place to go. Candace Mae, CandaceMae.com. And if you go to when you go to my website, you'll see a page, author, speaker. And if you go there, you'll see my latest book. It actually publishes June 28th. That's when the books ship. But pre-sales are going on right now. It's a great book that talks all about personal growth, Heaven Within, Restoring Wholeness for Better Leadership. It does have a lot of my stories in there and how God uses our life circumstances to shape us and to teach us. And I talk about our brain and how it functions by design. I talk about systemic issues in families and organizations that's very relevant today. It talk about the conscious and the subconscious mind and how all of this works. We talk about our response to abuse and what our responsibilities is to grow and heal ourselves. We talk about choices and the power of words and abundance and scarcity mindset. And there's 2 workbooks that are complimentary. When you buy this book, you'll get the URLs with the book. And if you're maybe not done personal growth before, or maybe you have and you want to go deeper, these workbooks will give you great resources. It's a huge bonus. They're usually something that I would bundle in with my services, but I decided to gift it to those who purchase the book.
That sounds fantastic. Well, once again, Candace Mae, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Angus. I appreciated being here. I very much appreciate you and your audience.
Good stuff. All right, everyone. So we've covered a lot on that interview, haven't we? And while that knowledge is great, it's really applied knowledge that makes all the difference, isn't it? So my question to you now, as I ask you every week, is what is one initial step that you can take right now as a result of what you heard today? Make sure you go and do that now before you go on to the next thing. Finally, if you got some value from today, I'd really appreciate it if you'd head to where you heard this show and leave us a lovely 5-star rating just to give us the encouragement so we can bring you more great content every week. Otherwise, catch you next time on Practice Growth HQ.
Thanks for listening to another info-packed episode of Practice Growth HQ with Angus Pryor.
Any links mentioned, along with an entire transcript of the show, can be found at practicegrowthhq.com.
And to make sure you never miss another episode, go now to Apple Podcasts or wherever you heard this show and hit subscribe.